It seems my husband has been possessed by a demon. I am going to give this house to Emily. If you disagree, I will divorce you. He wants to give our house, which I bought, to our eldest son's wife. Old lady, get out early. The daughter-in-law has my husband on her side. I am changing it to my name. I can pay the $1,800 mortgage. Even our eldest son is on their side. Well, I have no lingering attachment to this filthy house anymore. Then I'll leave. You three can go to hell for all I care. Brace yourselves. I'm Margaret, 60 years old. I work in a senior position at a major company. I live with my husband, George, who is 2 years younger than me. Last year, we remodeled our house thinking about the future. Our house was built by my father and is quite old. Because of it, it was pretty run down, and we wanted to make it more comfortable for our approaching old age. But given our age, the mortgage was a bit high at $1,800. However, it wasn't an amount we couldn't pay, and since I'm in a senior position at a major company, we passed the mortgage assessment. George works as a manager at a small to medium-sized restaurant and earns less than me, so it was easier for me to get the mortgage. It's tough to keep paying with my income. It was originally your father's house, and now it's in your name. I'm sorry, but could you pay it all? In exchange, I'll contribute more to our living expenses. We discussed and decided to remodel. Our home, now beautiful and comfortable, is unrecognizable. Transforming the house I've lived in since childhood can make us continue living here. It is truly delightful. But I never imagined I'd be the one leaving. One day, my phone vibrated. I'm getting married. I was told this over the phone by my eldest son, Daniel. Daniel is 31 and works as a department manager at a major company. Ever since he was young, our eldest son has been diligent, dedicating himself to his studies and club activities. He's been incredibly passionate about his work even after becoming an adult. Because of this, I've never heard any rumors about him. A woman whom Daniel is considering for marriage. Truly intriguing. I wonder what kind of woman she is. Since Daniel likes her, she must be wonderful. But what if she's exploiting Daniel's limited love experience for something sinister? With my son bringing home a woman for the first time, I was both excited and anxious. Then the day of the introduction came. A woman with brown hair wearing a white chiffon dress, embodying purity, arrived. I'm Emily. Nice to meet you. She was very well-mannered and clean, making a great first impression. Pleased to meet you, father, mother. She said with a bright smile, showing her beautiful white teeth. I can entrust Daniel to this person. As I thought this, it seemed George felt the same, as he was all smiles. She seems like a good girl. As George softly murmured this, the woman clasped his hand, looked him in the eyes, and said, I'm so happy to hear you say that, George. Let's get along well. What? What is this girl doing? I was taken aback by her closeness and instinctively drew back. Daniel was also surprised. But George seemed pleased. Although I wasn't jealous, I wasn't exactly feeling great about it. What are you doing? I considered about Daniel's feeling and approached her. She immediately apologized in a flustered manner. I'm so sorry. It's our first meeting, and my apologies. And quickly let go of George's hand. I often hear that I don't quite get personal boundaries right. I don't mean any harm by it, it just happens. I'm truly sorry. She didn't seem like a bad person. Still, given the good first impression, her earlier behavior was surprising. But Daniel was totally smitten with her. Despite her earlier actions, he said, yeah. Emily might not get personal space, but I think that's one of her good points. I'm shy around women and not very sociable, but because she approached me like that, I was able to date her and now we're even considering marriage. It's surprising how much Daniel has changed because of Emily's actions. Please take good care of Daniel. Despite my thoughts, she must be a good person. I approved of their marriage. Things moved swiftly, and a few weeks later, they were officially married. I truly wished for their happiness. Half a year after their marriage, one day. I'm home, huh? When I returned from work, I noticed women's shoes at the entrance. Going into the living room, there was Emily. Oh. Mother-in-law. Welcome back. Looking at the table, there were empty cans and bottles of alcohol everywhere. It seemed they had been drinking together. Well, what's this? I wondered why they were having a drinking party without Daniel. Curious, I asked. Well, when I was about to leave work, I bumped into Emily by chance. She said she wanted to get closer to me, so we decided to have a drink. But it's just before payday, so you're probably short on cash, right? That's why I invited her to drink at our place. Why are they drinking at our place? It would have been better if Daniel was also here, and although I didn't want to intrude on the newlyweds, they could have drunk at Daniel and Emily's place. I said this while tilting my head. It could have been at our place too, but this house is so beautiful, isn't it? And right now, our place is a bit messy. Her speech was slurred. I was surprised by her casual way of speaking since she usually speaks so properly, but it must be the alcohol talking. Still, why were they drinking together? Why didn't you invite Daniel? I think it's a little out of the ordinary for a wife to come to her in-laws' house alone, and that too for a drink, even though they are newlyweds. Ever since I saw them, I've been looking for Daniel. Dan is, you know, swamped with work right now, tons of overtime and all. So, I've been feeling super lonely, just so lonely. Emily started crying as she said that. There, it's not your fault, Emily, the bad one here is Daniel for neglecting you, especially since you're newlyweds. George began to comfort her by patting her head as he said this. Oh. George. What is this scene? It's unsettling. Hey. George. Emily is your daughter-in-law. It's not right towards Daniel, and you shouldn't do this. I scolded George for his excessive behavior. Then. No. Don't get mad at him. Emily defended George. Huh? I was so bewildered that I blurted it out without thinking. I had a lot I wanted to say, but I was too tired from work and found everything too bothersome. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up afterwards. I sighed and escaped to the bathroom as if fleeing the scene. Then I called Daniel to explain the situation. He interrupted his work and said he would come to pick her up right away. Emily might seem odd to me, but considering he would come despite being busy, Daniel must really love her. However, their married life might be somewhat challenging. I might become the unpleasant mother-in-law, but I decided to give Daniel some advice about their future life together once he arrived. I was lost in thought while soaking in the bath, so quite some time had passed. Feeling a bit lightheaded, I went to the living room. I expected to see Daniel had come to pick up Emily, but, despite having driven here, for some reason, he was drinking. Daniel, you drove here, right? And you drank. When I asked, Daniel responded cheerily, as if he were tipsy. Well, Emily insisted I have a drink, so just like that, we decided to stay over tonight. I was happy that my son would stay over. But, unfortunately, it also meant his wife, who had made a very poor impression, would stay as well. And quite suddenly at that. Oh. I was honestly perplexed. But Daniel had already drunk. Look. I can drive you guys home. I didn't want Emily to stay over. Feeling tired, I still suggested driving them to their place. However. No. That wouldn't be right. You must be tired too, right? How about you join us for a drink instead? Daniel said with an easygoing smile. I couldn't say anything more. What? At that moment, I felt something was off. Emily suddenly smirked, but it seemed to carry a hint of malice. It was as if she was laughing at my bewildered state. It's just my imagination, right? I tried to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding, but in reality, her incredibly dangerous plan had already begun. The next day, Emily apologized numerous times for her blunder. I'm truly sorry. Saying that, she left, and I felt a wave of fatigue wash over me as I thought, it seems the storm has passed. Then, when I got home that day, Emily was there again. Daniel was nowhere in sight. I felt a sense of despair, but the situation seemed different from yesterday. I'm sorry for intruding again, but I just had to apologize. She said this and offered me some sweets. I got carried away too, my bad. George seemed repentant. Although I was upset, they seemed remorseful, so perhaps I should let it go this time. I forgave them. Thank you. And then, perhaps because she felt awkward about the whole situation, Emily stopped coming to our house. Honestly, I didn't really want to interact with her much either, so I was relieved by this outcome. Just a day when I thought everything was settling down. With a serious expression, George said to me, "I need to talk to you." As I was sitting in the living room, Daniel and Emily arrived at our house. It's been a while. I greeted them, but for some reason, I was ignored. Maybe they didn't hear me. As I was pondering this, George suddenly shouted, "I'm giving this house to Emily. If you object, we're getting a divorce." What? I was shocked. Giving the house to Emily? I couldn't make sense of it. As I stood there dumbfounded, Emily said, "Margaret, please leave." What? What's going on? I was confused. Wait a minute, giving the house to Emily, what's that about? When I confronted them, George responded, You've always been bullying Emily, haven't you?" Such foolishness. Bullying. Absolutely baseless. That's impossible. But George wouldn't listen to my protests. Shut up. She told me so. She said she couldn't come to the house because of it and she cried about it. George continued to yell as Emily cried. Why is this happening? Then Daniel, as if to join in, also lost his temper. I can't believe you'd do such a thing, Mom. That's really messed up. The more I denied it, the angrier they got, and Emily's tears kept flowing. That's why I'm divorcing you. Get out now. I'm going to live here with them. Why do I have to give my house to Emily in the first place? When I asked George the reason, he said, because Emily was deeply hurt. Normally, we should demand compensation, but I thought of a better way. Taking this precious house from you and giving it to Emily. That way, you'd suffer the appropriate damage, right? Why do I have to be punished when I haven't done anything? Especially since Emily quit her job to get married, there's no way she can afford an $1,800 mortgage. When I pointed that out, no worries. We'll change the title to Daniel's name. With Daniel's salary and employer. The title change should be a breeze. Even so, with a mortgage involved, a title change shouldn't be that simple. If it were that easy, anyone could buy a house. I doubt the bank will agree to that. George retorted, you work for a big company, but so does Daniel. It should be fine. Plus, I have a friend who works at the bank where you got your mortgage. I'll talk to him, so it should be okay. It's unclear where such confidence comes from. That's right. An $1,800 mortgage is nothing. Encouraged by George's words, Daniel was overly confident. It's seriously turning into a situation where I have to hand over my house. I've said it multiple times, but I haven't bullied anyone. So, I absolutely won't hand over the house. When I objected, the two of them got angry again. This is just too bothersome. As I was feeling fed up, Emily, who had been crying all along, spoke up. Margaret, for the sake of our child, please. Emily pleaded while rubbing her belly. Could it be? Mom. Emily is pregnant. If she remains mentally unstable, it might lead to a miscarriage. So, please, just give in. They're telling me about the pregnancy now. Certainly, stress is the last thing you need during pregnancy. But to be accused of something I didn't do and to hand over the house because of that. I felt endlessly frustrated. Could you leave me alone for a bit? I left the room and went to the bedroom. Bullying, what? Have I unconsciously done something terrible to Emily? As I lay on the bed pondering, I noticed something. What's this? There were brown hairs on the bed. George and I both have black hair. It's impossible for there to be brown hairs. Wait, does this mean there was infidelity? Following the earlier dispute, I discovered such a terrible truth as well. My mind was on the verge of exploding. I just can't make sense of anything anymore. Overwhelmed, I ended up crying myself to sleep. When I woke up, it was night. As I was about to enter the living room, I heard voices. It seemed Daniel and Emily hadn't left. I wish I could have had a drink too. You can't, Emily, you're pregnant. George and Emily were getting lively. I had no opportunity to join in. Emily's mysterious accusation had left me feeling down. As I stayed out of the living room, suddenly I heard sounds that seemed like smooching. Emily. I love you. Stop it, George. What if Daniel and your wife find out this? What? What are they doing? What on earth is happening? It's fine, he's passed out drunk. And she's been in her room this whole time, she's probably asleep by now. Sulking in bed, huh? That's bad. The brown hair was likely Emily's. Disgusting. What were they doing on the bed where I had just been sleeping? I feel nauseous. They're probably planning to have a good time with Emily behind Daniel's back after kicking me out. My house used for their affair. Fine, I'll get rid of this repulsive house. But remember this. The next morning, I pretended as if I had slept in my bedroom and appeared before the three of them as if nothing had happened. In reality, I didn't want to sleep in that bed anymore and was too shocked to sleep at all. Are you finally going to hand over the house? When I said, I've decided to give up the house, everyone's faces lit up with smiles. Great. Then let's go change the title. I should pass the loan assessment easily. Daniel was visibly excited. He probably doesn't know anything. I felt sad, but I decided not to enlighten a son who completely disregards his mother's words and he is under his wife's thumb. Not yet, anyway. Then followed days filled with the hustle and bustle of divorce proceedings and title changes. It was tough, but somehow the title change was completed. This is no longer your house. George taunted me. Get out already, old lady. Emily whispered in my ear. I was infuriated. But I was going to leave anyway. Letting go of the house I had lived in since birth. It was sad, but it had also been tainted by infidelity. I had no more attachment to it. And from here on, I would stir up trouble for these three odd characters. Just wait and see. About a month after I left. I'm finally ready. I visited my former home. When I rang the doorbell, George is furious despite it being a long time. He snapped, "What does a stranger want? I have something to talk about." "Won't you let me in?" I asserted strongly. "Why should I let you into my house?" George was adamant about not letting me in. "It's something very important. For Emily too." Something important for Emily? Mentioning her name got me smoothly admitted into the house. Honestly, I didn't even want to say her name, it felt so repugnant. But I knew George was weak for her, so I used her name. "A stranger has come." Stranger? Sure, I might technically be a stranger after the divorce, but that's no way to speak. George's attitude irked me. "What do you want now?" The three of them were on high alert. "I want you to see this." I laid out the photos. "Is this?" The photos showed George and her on a date. In fact, after the divorce, I had hired a detective to tail the two of them. As a result, I got photos of them dating. Wait a minute, what? Daniel was visibly shaken. Then George blurted out, "What's the big deal with these photos?" "We're just a close father-in-law and daughter-in-law, nothing more, nothing less." "Yeah. What's the point of taking such nonsensical photos?" The two of them insisted on their close relationship. "What about this, then?" I pulled out my phone and played an audio clip. "I really do love Emily. Shh. If you talk so loudly, Daniel and your mother-in-law will wake up." It was George and her voices, accompanied by disgusting sounds. What? I had actually recorded their exchange on the day I discovered their affair. It's not what it seems like. This is all a misunderstanding. George tried desperately to explain. What's the misunderstanding here? This is totally unacceptable. Naturally, Daniel was furious. She was looking down, defeated. Then, I added fuel to the fire. "Hey, not to be rude, but whose child is that really in your belly?" Daniel's face turned deathly pale in an instant. No way, with my father. That's impossible. My father-in-law pulled out and she dug her own grave. You admitted it. You just admitted it, didn't you? The three of them screamed, and George and Daniel got into a scuffle. Ouch. It seems the fight caused her stomach to cramp, and the fight was paused. And then I quickly said, I've been saying it all along, haven't I? I wasn't bullying Emily. Could it be that you lied to get rid of me, and you made Daniel believe you? Daniel was taken aback. You're kidding, what's that about? That's the worst. I can't believe I trusted you and not my mom. Daniel, regretting that he had listened to the wicked woman and hadn't believed me. Now that we know this much, just tell us everything. Daniel yelled at the two of them. The two were reluctant to speak, but when the word "a trial" was mentioned, and he said, "Are we going to have to take this to court?" They finally started talking. It seems that at first, she really did love Daniel. But when she came to our house for a marriage greeting and saw our newly renovated, beautiful home, she wanted it for herself. My family home is pretty run down, and I envied such a beautiful house. The interior is quite nice too. She explained it in tears. She wanted the house so much that she planned to ingratiate herself with George on the day of their marriage introduction. So, she deliberately ambushed George on his way home from work and drank at home without inviting Daniel. It seems that during the months he didn't come home, George had been nurturing love with her and planning to oust me. If that was the case, you should have suggested living together from the start. When I said that, she remained silent for a moment before responding. The image of a mill didn't sit well with me. My mom and grandma at home were always fighting. My grandma used to pick on my mom. So I thought I didn't want to live with a MIL. The only way to live comfortably in a clean house was to ask my mother-in-law to leave. Indeed, with such an image, she wouldn't want to live with their mill. But to go as far as taking someone's husband. However, what did George think of this reality? I knew I was being used. But, when I came to greet her, and she held my hand and smiled at me, I was all ready. Despite knowing he was being used, George fell in love and chose to do such a thing to keep her by his side, abandoning me. You guys are the worst. When Daniel said that, the two of them just hung their heads and cried. Afterward, Daniel naturally went through with the divorce. When he had the child's DNA checked just to be sure, it turned out to be George's child. I won't be paying child support, Daniel said as he demanded alimony from the two of them. Of course, same here. To think I'd have to demand alimony from my own father. As Daniel lamented, I patted his head. We were driven mad by a foolish woman. But more than us, her life would be thrown into chaos, something she would regret forever. And my premonition came true. 2 years have passed since then. She decided to remarry George and stay together without getting a divorce. This decision was supposedly made for the sake of their child. To work, she enrolled her child in daycare. Grandpa? I mean, Daddy came to pick you up today, huh? It seems she is being judged by the other moms at the daycare. While the children seem to be having fun together, she's filled with sadness because she hasn't been able to make any mom friends. Furthermore, when she explained to her parents about the divorce and remarrying George, they were furious, directing their anger towards George. Now, they are estranged. It's all a result of her own actions. By the way, Daniel is now living alone in that house. I wanted to sell it, but that would have been too cruel to Mom. After all, this is the house where Mom has lived her entire life, right? A house filled with so many memories. I can't sell it. Even though I said it was creepy and he could sell it, he's filled with too much guilt to go through with it. Perhaps because I said too often that house is creepy. He had the house cleaned and threw out all of George and her belongings. Daniel, who went to such lengths, said, even though it was because of that woman, I did something terrible to Mom. You might not forgive me, but please, see me or come to the house on a whim, and let me show my filial piety. He even gave me a luxury hotel voucher as a present. Daniel is truly repentant. I can't forgive him yet, but I'm willing to try to return to our original parent-child relationship.